Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and finally, I'm going to be making a dedicated video on Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. When we got the first trailer during the Switch 2 Direct back in April, it didn't really sell me too much on the game. I was actually a little bit underwhelmed. And with this latest trailer, there are certainly some oddities which we'll be speaking on today. What I found most interesting are the different secrets I found throughout the trailer. This is starting to remind me a little bit of a couple years ago when there were so many different secrets and things we were finding throughout all the Tears of the Kingdom footage, and we were theorizing about so much so crazy. There's a little bit of that going on right now. There's some cool stuff in here that I think a lot of Zelda fans are going to appreciate. So that's what we're doing today, a trailer analysis on the latest trailer for Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Let me tell you about this sleep mask from Manta Sleep, the sponsor for today's video. If you find yourself in need of a little bit of extra rest or an afternoon nap, then this sleep mask might be a great fit for you. When I tried it out, I was actually surprised at how soft and comfortable it is, and when you put it upon your face, it does its job. It blocks out all light and it puts you in a position to sleep quite easily, undisturbed. And I also found that the back strap was highly adjustable and not abrasive in any way. It was all very comfortable and soft to put on. So if you're looking to improve your sleep, check out the Manta Sleep mask in the link in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART. So the trailer starts off by showing us another look of the ancient Hyrule Castle. Let's keep in mind that the story of this game is taking place in the past of Tears of the Kingdom. Princess Zelda goes back into the past and we see a whole bunch of different flashbacks and scenes of her exploring the past with Rauru and Queen Sonia. And my running theory for what's going on here is that we are literally going to be playing through the events we see in those flashback scenes, in those memories, in Tears of the Kingdom. So, for example, in the first trailer, we saw that Princess Zelda was walking along this grassy field alongside Queen Sonia and King Rauru. I believe this is actually something that takes place shortly after Princess Zelda meets Sonia and Rauru, something we see in the memories of Tears of the Kingdom. And this walk is actually in the lead up to the castle, because we do have a scene in Tears of the Kingdom where they talk about how they're going to take Princess Zelda to the castle and tell everyone that she's just a close relative. Notice how she's still wearing her clothes from the modern era. In this next scene here, we see King Rauru handing over this big Zonai mask to a Goron. This is the same mask of the Goron Sage, and from what we understand of this game, it does look like we're going to get a much better understanding of the characters that were the sages in this current time, and we're probably going to be getting some face reveals, and I'll be getting into that a little bit later into this video. Next here we see this gloom attacking King Rauru and his soldiers, but notice how this gloom is forming these small little ghost-like figures, almost like little mini puppets. Let's keep in mind that this is before Ganondorf becomes the monster he is in the present time of Tears of the Kingdom. So perhaps his evil Ganon puppets aren't really as strong or as formed as they are in Tears of the Kingdom, and this is sort of the equivalent for that current time. Just these little mini-like gloom figures. And maybe some of that has to do with the fact that Ganondorf does get a power-up towards the end of the memories in Tears of the Kingdom when he steals the Secret Stone from Queen Sonia. Now on the note of Queen Sonia, we do get some nice lines of Queen Sonia here.
Given an opening, he will bear his fangs. Until Hyrule itself is no more.
It appears she's talking about how if they leave Ganondorf unchecked, this could mean the end for all of Hyrule. Now, I don't think that's anything groundbreaking, but I do appreciate that we were hearing more from Queen Sonia here. In the memories of Tears of the Kingdom, I felt like we didn't really get that much of her, and so in this game, we're going to actually get to see a lot more of her, hear more dialogue, and get a better understanding of this character in full. So here's an actual cool little discovery here. Notice this Goron. This is the Sage of the time, right? He is activating his powers. You see the Secret Stone powering up, but then notice his fellow Sage, the Rito Sage, all of a sudden has Daruk's protection. If you remember from Breath of the Wild, that orange orb that would protect Link. This is a champion power. And what's interesting about this is that we're seeing the Goron Sage not necessarily using a Sage power like we saw in Tears of the Kingdom, but a champion power, and he's not putting it upon himself, but his friend. So it looks like we're going to be able to mix powers here. Sages will be able to send over their powers to others. Now, does it go both ways? I would assume, but we've yet to see full evidence of that. Another neat thing we see is that the Rito Sage is using a Zonai item, the Flamethrower. Is this giving all the different characters a wider range of moves and abilities? Well, when I think about how this game likely will not have as many characters as other Warriors games, they may need to think of other ways to mix things up, so giving these characters a wide range of different items to use to mix up what they can actually do with their attack patterns and such might be one way to do it, and there's a lot to pull from with all the different Zonai items we saw in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, something else neat we see from this trailer is that there is an exploration of the depths. The depths are not forgotten in Age of Imprisonment. But we also get another look at Zelda's light sword here. She appears to have some sort of instrument to help facilitate her light powers. Now, I remember from the story of Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda was struggling with her powers, and she needed to learn how to use both her light and time powers. So this light sword here might be an instrument to help her channel her powers in a more efficient, potent fashion. And then we see these light beams that remind me of that massive light beam that King Rauru, Zelda, and Sonia put together during the fight between them and Ganondorf when they had to repel that entire herd of Molduga. We also get another look at Minoru fighting as well. We've seen her riding some Zonai items in the past, but in this shot here, we see her using multiple Zonai items and she can cast them away. She has like this wand, so she appears to be a wizard that can just spawn different types of Zonai items, which I assume is very different from other characters like the Rito Sage using the Flamethrower. In this next scene here, we see Princess Zelda using the recall ability. Even it has the same effect, and we're seeing that there's a reversal of time for particular objects, just like in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, some might be wondering, is this a different version of Princess Zelda that uses recall as a weapon as opposed to that light sword? Well, no, because you see very briefly she's still holding that item before she starts using recall. So both of these things are part of her overall moveset, it looks like. Something else really cool that we see here is that Zelda's fighting alongside the Zora Sage, and the Zora Sage is almost doing some sort of like float dance around her, which reminds me of Mipha's Grace whenever she would give Link some vitality and life back in Breath of the Wild. So this might be the same thing, considering that we saw the Goron Sage giving Daruk's protection to the Rito Sage. This might be the Zora Sage providing Mipha's Grace to Princess Zelda. Now here's a really cool segment. We have the first proper face reveal for one of the four sages, the Gerudo Sage. We see her without the mask. And she's also fighting Rauru alongside all these other Gerudo soldiers. What's going on with that? Well, we also hear lines from her as well.
But you sought it from Hyrule of all places? This is madness!
But you sought it from Hyrule of all places. This is madness. This takes me back to my theory on how they're telling the events of this game. Basically, this seems to be what's going on before she becomes a sage, hence why she does not have the mask, and she's fighting Rauru because in the early memories we saw that King Rauru, Queen Sonia, and Princess Zelda were fighting Ganondorf and the Gerudo. So this seems to be a scene from that moment before there's a transition over to Ganondorf becoming the Demon King. And this dialogue we hear in this trailer from this Gerudo, I'm assuming is actually dialogue between her and Ganondorf, or at least about Ganondorf, because he is going after Hyrule here, and she thinks it's madness. He's starting to go crazy in his effort to take over Hyrule here. And so this is some really cool stuff, and it has me thinking about other things we'll learn about. So for example, the two witches that support Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time, we've seen them in Tears of the Kingdom, but they have no dialogue, minimal interaction. We just see them very briefly in the memories. I would say we're probably going to actually get to see them a lot more in this game. And the more I think about it, the more it starts to make sense. We saw these characters, Kotaka and Koeme, and they were clearly referencing the original Kotaka and Koeme from Ocarina of Time, but to see them get pretty much no real character moments here, very minimal, it always had me thinking that maybe they had something more in mind. And I feel the same can be said for the sages. They create these character models and they cover their faces with these masks. And then with Queen Sonia, she seemed like such an important character, but her time on screen was short-lived. Maybe it was always the plan that they were going to have an Age of Imprisonment where they would be expanding upon these characters from the past. So that's definitely my expectation here going into the story of Age of Imprisonment. We're going to be learning a lot more about all these different characters that just didn't get enough time in the memories of Tears of the Kingdom. But we're not done with this trailer analysis here. There's a little bit more. that final scene might be the most significant one yet. So there's a cool reference. I've been using Fi's theme as the background music for this video. But you see here in the trailer, they're using Fi's theme. It's a very cool reference, but then it has me wondering. Fi or Fi, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, I think people have said it in different ways. But this character from Skyward Sword, this is essentially the spirit of the Master Sword, does she have something to do with what's going on in this scene? I'm sure many will be jumping to that conclusion, and perhaps accurately. But this scene looks like it's taking place in the Room of Awakening. So if you remember, in the Great Sky Island in Tears of the Kingdom, Link wakes up in the Room of Awakening, and it's this ruin that has trees and roots all throughout. This looks very similar. However, there's a very big difference. This one appears to have like the dust particles and some of the plant life we saw in the depths. And I'm reminded of the fact that we learned that all the things that we see in the sky, they were not originally there. We learn in Tears of the Kingdom that these things went up into the sky afterwards, after the events of the Imprisoning War. And so I think that explains why we're seeing these elements here. But then we see this construct coming together here. What or who is this construct? If they're using this as the last scene to show for the trailer, clearly they're emphasizing its importance. What is going on here? Well, my first thought was this somehow ties into the hero, this era's version of Link. Because every era has a hero, right? Their version of Link. And yet we don't know who that is in this ancient past. However, we have seen the hero's aspect from Tears of the Kingdom, this final unlockable costume once you beat all the shrines in Tears of the Kingdom. And the in-game description of the ancient hero's aspect is this. This item is said to contain the spirit of a hero who once saved Hyrule. That hero's aura will envelop the wearer. But looking at the ancient hero's aspect, is it the same thing that we are seeing in this trailer? And the answer is yes and no. There are elements of it that are the case, like notice the knee pads, how they have a face on them. That's also here in the trailer. And also notice the jaw or mouth area. If you look carefully, you can tell that it's not like a flat face like a normal human, but more of like an extended mouth or snout, kind of like you would see for Zonai or the ancient hero's aspect. So I am leaning in this direction, but it is also not entirely the same. It also looks like a construct, not too different from Mineru's construct. There are similarities there as well. Notice all the gold for the torso area. But then when we also think about how we heard Fi's theme, is there some sort of hint going on here? I think the answer is yes, there is some sort of hint going on here. I do think this ultimately ties into who takes the role of the hero for this time. Now, this isn't a flesh and body character. Maybe it's the spirit of an ancient hero enveloping this construct, which wouldn't be too different from the ancient hero's aspect in the current time of Tears of the Kingdom. That armor that had the aura of the ancient hero. This might be something very similar. And of course, we know from Tears of the Kingdom that Mineru can possess an entire construct as well and exist in that current time as a spirit possessing a construct, so perhaps that's exactly what we're looking at here, except this time it's not Mineru in a construct, but some spirit of the hero. Now, some people might think it's just Fi herself, who's from the Master Sword, but I think it should also be noted that many heroes have used the Master Sword, so there might be a little bit of a combination here. It might not be totally concrete, but we won't get more clues until we learn more about this game. But now, I am more interested in this game. I'm very curious on what's going on. Of course, there are some oddities about the trailer. We've seen some footage running at 60 frames per second from the partner spotlight, but with the first trailer was running at 30, and this trailer the game is running at 30. Very strange, not sure what's going on with that. But then also, they've shown us this game again for a third time, and still no specific release date, still just winter, and yet here we are, it's the very end of July, we're entering August, and we don't know exactly when this game is coming out. Is it going to make it out by the end of the year, or is it coming out sometime early next year? We don't know. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Don't forget you can check out the Matte to Sleep mask in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.